Testing, 1, 2, 3. Good morning. I'm Eric Blank, and this is the Commissioners' Weekly Meeting for April 3rd, 2024. Let's quickly approve the consent agenda and then turn to public comment. Commissioner Bryant?
I would vote to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Gilman?
I also would approve the consent agenda.
As would I. On the first Wednesday of every month, we have scheduled a public comment hearing at the beginning of our weekly meeting to allow for greater public input on general PUC matters, which is any topic that's not currently before us for decision, but under our jurisdiction. Are there any public comments? Ms. Glustrom.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Leslie Glustrom, and I really wanted to thank you so much for this opportunity for the public to speak. It's a relatively new addition to the Commission's proceedings, and since it's the Public Utilities Commission, I really very much appreciate that this has happened. As the Chairman knows, I've just been informed that under the rules that have just been established, and I guess I'm going to say this for the public that might be listening, and I know there are quite a few people listening, that if you're a member of the public and you file a written comment, then it could be stated that you can't speak about that comment. So the thing I had planned to talk about this morning has just been ruled out of bounds for me. For those that wonder, I wanted the commissioners to have the key documents right in front of them, so they were filed this morning in the 21A0141E proceeding, the Excel Electric Resource Plan. But under the rule that was just laid out as a public comment, now I can't speak about it in public. You might imagine that I have some objection to that because I'm being caught in a swinging door. I can't intervene, so I can't actually be a formal party these days, but now I can't actually both file a written comment and speak about it publicly. So I am hoping that the Commission and the Commission staff will recognize, frankly, that if the Commission had listened to me over the last 20 years, we would have avoided several $1 billion worth of mistakes in this state. So one way or another, I would ask that you find a way to let voices in that may be calling it right. Called it right on Pueblo Unit 3. I've called it right on Clean Air, Clean Jobs, all of which is all just going to end up in the landfill, having charged customers billions of dollars. And I would ask that you find a way to let members of the public who care enough to do this to actually have their voices heard and not jacked around by an attorney who can't wrap his mind around the fact that we've made billions of dollars of mistakes in this state, and it's all going to end up in the landfill after real people pay return of and return on. And when that happens, then the law is not serving the public, and the Commission is not serving the public. So I beg of you to find a way to let members of the public who frankly have called it right time and time again, and it's not just me, there's hundreds of people that show up and say, don't do this, this is a mistake. You're wasting our money. But you know, the powers to be are like, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And now we're billions of dollars in the hole on mistakes on coal plants that we now have to dig our way out of. So anybody who's listening, when the time comes, if I'm not here, if you want to find the breadcrumbs on the Pueblo Unit 3 coal plant, just look for my filings. When I realized I couldn't keep the state from making this mistake, I have made sure that I have tried to leave a trail of breadcrumbs so that ratepayers who had no involvement, because you can't get the public involved at the Commission in a meaningful way, who've paid for all of this, will not also be held responsible for paying off the stranded assets. And I would ask that the Commission reopen the investigatory docket, which is not currently before you for consideration. But if you take a minute, you will understand why it's very important to do that and to start protecting ratepayers for the reasons that I have laid out over the last 20 years. And before closing, I just want to thank these three commissioners. I now have, other than Rick Faneuil, I have more seniority here than anybody. Everybody else is gone, all the commissioners, all the staff. And I just want to thank you. We've never had three really fine commissioners like the three of you. And so I appreciate the work you do. We listen, and I wish there was a little more two-way communication, and that lawyers who have never had the courage to call it right are now able to, on the fly, make a decision that prevents people like me, who made the effort to come down, from speaking about a very important issue that you should be thinking about. So I appreciate your time, commissioners.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Glustrom. Anybody else would like to offer public comment? With that, Mr. Riley, Ms. Harper, amendments to the Commission's TNC rules.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nate Riley with Transportation Staff, along with Ruthie Harper and Mitch DeCenzo with your Commission Counsel. Today, we would like to bring forward a Notice to Proposed Rulemaking, or NOPR, which incorporates certain aspects of Senate Bill 23-187 into the Commission's Rules for Transportation Network Companies, or TNCs. This bill was signed into law by Governor Polis in May 2023, and the included amendments to statute were effective immediately due to an incorporated safety clause. Prior to the passing of Senate Bill 23-187, annual TNC permit fees were set in statute under 4010.1606 CRS, dating back to the original TNC legislation in June 2014. As part of the recent bill, the statutory language was modified to allow the Commission to administratively set the annual TNC permit fees effective January 1st, 2024. In addition, the updated statutes allow for the Commission to establish new permit fee tiers based on the consideration of various market factors. These market factors include a TNC's market share in the areas in which it operates, the number of years a TNC has operated in Colorado, a TNC's ownership structure, and whether a newly formed TNC entering the market is an affiliate or subsidiary of an existing motor carrier or a taxi or shuttle company converting to a TNC pursuant to statute. This NOPR includes changes to Commission Rule 6702, which governs the annual permit application process for TNCs. Transportation staff has previously coordinated stakeholder engagement with the TNC industry on the underlying statutory changes and discussed the best ways to implement the new tiered permit fee framework. This includes meetings in July 2023 and follow-up conversations in December 2020. The result of these stakeholder engagements was the creation of a model that conforms to the new statutes, including the establishment of 3 fee tiers for large, medium, and small TNC operations. Stakeholders have all expressed support for this new model, and there have been numerous prospective TNC applicants that have inquired about entering the market using this new administratively set fee structure. If there are no other questions so far, and before moving on to the recommendation, Council has an additional point to add to the discussion.
Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Ruthie Harper of your Commission Council. Just one point to add. Although I do recommend that the proposed rules are a good starting point to launch the rulemaking, I have a suggested issue to flag for comment in the NOPR. Given that this concept of tiered fees is new, I suggest flagging for comment whether the provisions in the proposed rules identifying the market factors for tiers go far enough, or whether the rules should break out the resulting tiers in more detail. I think there's some legal and policy room for the Commission to ultimately decide how much to put into the rule, but there's no clear right or wrong approach at this point, since this is all new. So it would help the record to call out this issue for comment to rulemaking participants.
Back to you, Mr. Riley.
Thank you. At this time, we're happy to answer any questions you may have, or if you like, we can proceed to a recommendation.
No, if you can give us your recommendation, that'd be great.
Thank you. It's recommended that the Commission open a notice of proposed rulemaking in regards to the aforementioned amendments to the TNC rules.
Commissioner Plum?
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I. And that can be an ABC decision, opening a rulemaking, doing the NOPR, setting it for public comment, and I guess we're going to refer to an ALJ. Mr. Riley?
Yes, that seems appropriate. Just to clarify on the ABC order, we would be including that additional language that the council recommended, correct?
That's mine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Proceeding number 23AL-0243, Mr. Davis, Service Company, Colorado, Phase 2 electric grid case. Should I take the next item? If it takes as long as my computer.
Sorry about that delay. So good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ellie Friedman of your advisory staff, and with me today is Ron Davis, Chief Advisor, and Ruthie Harper and Alex Acera, Commission Counsel. So on February 23rd, the Commission issued decision number C-24-00117 in this proceeding, authorizing, among other things, the use of a probability of dispatch peak hours, or POD-PH, cost allocation methodology, requiring the filing of an advice letter in September this year to address residential and commercial time of use periods, directing the analysis of a possible rate class for small commercial customers with demands between 50 and 100 kilowatts, and considering the cost allocation of advanced meter infrastructure meters. On March 14th, 2024, Public Service Company, Colorado Energy Consumers, CEC, Federal Executive Agencies, FEA, Walmart, Climax Molybdenum, Energy Outreach Colorado, EOC, and the Colorado Solar and Storage Association and Solar Energy Industry Association, SEIA, each filed applications for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration of the Commission's decision in this proceeding. So I'll start with the first issue was raised by CEC, FEA, Walmart, and Climax, who all request reconsideration of the Commission's approval of the POD-PH cost allocation for transmission and distribution substation costs, urging the Commission to direct use of the 4 critical peak average and excess demand, or CP-AED methodology for these costs. The EC provides the most extensive arguments for the reconsideration of the POD-PH, contending that the record in this proceeding has substantial evidence to support 4CP-AED for these transmission and distribution substations, and that the use of the POD-POD here is contrary to principles of cost causation and rate stability. The EC points to the testimony of its witness Higgins, who argued that POD-PH is only appropriate for production plants and has no bearing on allocation of transmission and distribution substation costs, and to Climax witness Barron's testimony that the 4CP-AED allocator finds transmission costs in a manner that is representative of the cost drivers of transmission and investment and cost. The EC notes that Public Service had proposed 4CP-AED in its rebuttal case, saying that it is more appropriate for transmission and distribution substations because the costs of the associated costs are caused by coincident peak demand during summer months. In the Commission's decision, you decided that using a separate cost methodology was not appropriate in this case, but CEC cites that Tucson Electric Power and El Paso Electric both use different allocation methodologies for production and for transmission and distribution substation costs. CEC objects to the decision's reliance on EOC witness Chernick's testimony, arguing that Mr. Chernick's testimony was contradictory because he advocated POD for transmission and distribution substation costs, at the same time stated that POD is not well suited for these costs because the decisions about the type of generation to build do not have close analogs in transmission and distribution. FEA echoes CEC's arguments, stating that POD-PH is not appropriate for transmission and distribution plant because it is designed to reflect production costs related to peak hours and the dynamic nature of how the system is planned and resources distributed. So with that background, I'll turn the discussion on this issue back to the Commission.
Appreciate it, Ms. Friedman. Maybe I'll go first on this one, and do think maybe our order wasn't worded perfectly. I struggle with this issue, as I think the record is fairly clear about cost causation, but it's not offered us a choice that truly represents the underlying cost drivers. For me, both the ERP Phase 2 report and company witness Klingemann suggests the need for new transmission and likely distribution is driven primarily by summer peak demands, although likely not the top 4 hours. In the Phase 2 ERP report, the company talks about the planned expansion of the Denver metro area transmission being needed to serve load during the concerning 6 to 9 summer peak demand period. For me, 3 hours a night, 5 weekday days a week for 3 summer months represents somewhere between 80 and 200 hours of peak demand driving cost causation. Similarly, the dispatch of the more efficient peaking units and the shape and inflection points in the company's load duration curve also indicate that cost causation is likely determined by something like 80 to 200 peak hours. So for me, both the 4CP AED approach that only looks at the top 4 hours and the pod pH approach that seems to arbitrarily look at the top 1,000 hours both seem somewhat inaccurate as we integrate more intermittent resources, storage into a rapidly changing environment. And again, for me, the squishiness of this record is exacerbated by the company's flip-flop between its direct and rebuttal cases regarding these two approaches. Under these circumstances where we have two, in my view, somewhat inaccurate options, I tend to prefer this 4CP AED as it seems less wrong. But I can also see the logic in treating T&D the same as production for now, given the uncertainties in the record. So I prefer the 4CP AED, but can go either way, and really look forward to hearing your thoughts. So with that, Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we can get, largely where we want to go with 4CP AED. It doesn't capture all of the hours, as you pointed out, that are driving demand, but there's probably coincidence, between all the hours, as you mentioned, and the ones that we measure. But it's certainly an imperfect measurement strategy, and I feel like, at least with the generation, I think we got a little closer to, an accurate measurement with the POD/pH, but I can see how that may be raising some issues around some of the customers in the T&D side. So I could support doing the 4-speed AED if that were the way that we figured out was the best way to get there.
And we'll see what Commissioner Cohen says. This is not where she was last time.
Well, I mean, I think in a way the conversation is fairly similar to the first time, where there's not, to me, incredibly compelling evidence to lead you to one, I don't call them extreme, they're not really extremes, but to one situation versus the other. And so in our first deliberation, I said, without that compelling evidence that this is the right way to do it, I would be inclined to stick with consistency between that and the other cost allocation. Look, I feel similarly. I agree with you. It's probably something in between, and to the extent cost allocation is based on this rapidly changing system, we're also trying to predict the future with more demand influence and control, and what will end up happening. And then I think inevitably a lot more hours are going to come into play, in this much more dynamic system that we're talking about, which was part of the acknowledgement of the base cost allocation. So, so no, I mean, I feel very similar to you. I don't think there is a perfect option here. And that's why the first time I said, well, absent a perfect option or really compelling evidence that this is the right way to do it, I would stick with consistency between the two. But yeah, I mean,
it seems a little less wrong to me.
yeah. Perhaps now, I think the thing we're all looking at is as the system continues to change, this situation could change, certainly, and we would find something else to be more appropriate. So I'm okay with your suggestion, but I think we should recognize in the order that this is a fairly rapidly changing situation, as we see just the system dynamics change quite a bit, especially in terms of controllable loads and how demand might be managed on the system going forward. That could certainly impact kind of how the costs come down on certain parts of the system. So anything here feels somewhat temporary as we kind of keep tabs on what is really the most appropriate and accurate way to do this moving forward. But I'm okay with going with your suggestion now. And I agree with you, nothing is perfect. It's picking between two options that we understand neither reflect the really probably true economics of the situation.
Well, I'd offer one last thought, which is over the past few years, I think we've gotten a lot better in our ERP process through the ELCC and other analysis at determining the capacity value of individual generating resources, which is why I like the stratification methodology. But it seems like in contrast, our T&D planning seems behind and has not clarified the cost drivers quite the same way. So over time, I'd really like to see much more clarity about what's driving our new transmission and distribution. And really would like to see it linked to cost recovery too. So I don't know if you have any comments. You want to jump in, Commissioner Plan, or any comments?
No, I agree with you, and I was going to say something similar. I think we got, we really dove into, because of the new PODPH, we really dove into an analysis of that side of cost causation, whether it's POD or PODPH or CPAD, and then you introduce the stratification issue, and we had a lot of discussion around that, but not on the TND. That was sort of also thing, and it did not get, and maybe it's because the proposal that came in was for CPAD and not for PODPH on the TND, that it just was a continuation of what we've done. And so there wasn't as much of a discussion around whether or not that's the right thing. And I think that would be a good discussion to have in the next meeting.
Well, I guess a reluctant, half-hearted 3-0 vote for the 4CP. Does that give you what in the triple order capture the reluctance and uncertainty and frustration with the record and maybe T&D planning more broadly?
Thank you. We will. Thank you. The second issue raised with regard to cost allocation is actually just a clarification that Public Service requested that since the Commission required POD/PH methodology in the cost of service, there's 3 allocation factors, but now I'm pausing because the clarification was based on the expectation that they would apply the POD/PH to transmission. So I think we can skip through that. Ron says we can skip it. I think we can skip it.
Whatever Ron says.
So that would be moot.
Mr. Davis, please.
I think we'll call that moot. Moving on, EOC requests the Commission reconsider the decision's acceptance of AMI meter costs as 83% customer related, with the requirement that the company provide a more robust analysis of AMI costs in the next Phase 2 rate case. So while EOC agrees that the company should provide more analysis in its next Phase 2 case, EOC requests the Commission require the use of 2022 historic test year costs, not 2019 meter costs, as the company did in this analysis in this proceeding. EOC argues that modifying the decision to rely on 2022 data does not change the approved $7.10 service and facility charge that was approved by the Commission, and it would also better align the authorized S&F charge with the record. Using the methodology established by Public Service, EOC contends that with the 2022 HTY data, the customer-related costs in the cost of service study, the CCOSS, should be set at 64%, not 83%. I can proceed to a recommendation or pause if you have questions or discussion.
I'd like to hear a recommendation.
Public Service has argued that complete data on meter costs will not be available until all AMI meters are deployed. Thus, no change should be made to the AMI cost allocation between customer-related and system benefits. However, during the evidentiary hearing, Public Service witness Klingeman agreed that the actual AMI costs are higher than in 2019, whereas AMR costs are very likely to be lower, supporting a recalculation of the percentage of non-customer-related costs, as EOC suggests. Given that, advisors recommend granting EOC's request to direct Public Service to modify the CCOSS to reflect AMI customer-related costs at 64% rather than the 83% authorized in paragraph 64 of the decision.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I'd agree with using the 2022.
Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I.
Thank you. Also in the decision, the Commission directed the company in its next Phase 2 rate case to propose a new secondary general, or SG, rate class for customers with demand between 50 and 100 kilowatts and include a time of use component. Separately, the company was directed to file an advice letter by or before September 2nd, 2024, proposing new residential and commercial TOU rate schedules. In its RRR, COSA-SIA requests the Commission require the company to include the proposed new small SG rate class in the September advice letter filing, not in the next Phase 2. COSA-SIA reasons that because the new SG rate is to include a TOU component, it should be included in the September TOU advice letter. Alternatively, COSA-SIA suggests the Commission could set a date by which Public Service must make that Phase 2 filing. COSA-SIA further requests that the Commission direct the parties to conduct a holistic review and analysis of demand charges in future rate cases and provide explicit direction as to the type of data and input that would be most useful. So again, I can pause for your discussion or provide a recommendation.
If you could provide a recommendation, that'd be great.
We acknowledge the need to address the potential rate class for customers with demand between 50 and 100 kilowatts, but TOU advice letter filing is not the proper venue for evaluation of a new rate class. In a Phase 2 filing, the Commission can appropriately review the full class cost of service study and make a determination as to the creation of a new rate class. Also, while we agree with the holistic review of demand charges would be beneficial in future rate cases, the requirements set out and requested by COSA-SIA in this case are beyond the scope of the proceeding. So with that, I have three recommendations. One, advisors recommend denying COSA-SIA's request that the new SG class be included in the September TOU advice letter filing. We recommend the Commission decline to set a date by which the Phase 2 filing must be made. And we recommend denying the request to direct the parties to conduct a holistic review analysis of demand charges in the future rate case.
Commissioner Plant?
Agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman?
I agree with the recommendation. I guess the one thing, and I don't know if we can put this in order or even agree on this, but my expectation would be that concurrent or following the next Phase 1 electric rate case, there is a Phase 2. What would not be acceptable to me would be to go through multiple Phase 1s and skip the Phase 2 part where we want to see this happen. So while I agree that's not the proper venue, the TOU proceeding, sooner than later in terms of the cadence of rate cases, we should have a Phase 2 that's either concurrent or following on the next phase.
I support that request in addition to the order language. Commissioner Plant?
I agree. See, I just assumed we had a Phase 2 after a Phase 1.
Not always. I agree with both Commissioner Gilman's comment and the recommendation.
Thank you. In this proceeding, COSTA requested that the Commission make the SGTOU pilot program permanent. The Commission declined to do so. In Triple R, COSTA requests the Commission modify the SGTOU pilot, allowing customers to be on the rate for 20 years, even if the pilot is terminated. COSTA contends that this certainty is necessary to encourage participation in the pilot program because potential customers need certainty before making investments in demand response technologies, storage options that will allow them to benefit from the pilot's rates. Again, I can make a recommendation if you'd like.
I would.
Advisors recommend granting COSTA-CIA's request in part. Rather than require the tariff to guarantee availability for 20 years or any fixed amount of time, advisors recommend the tariff indicate that in the event the rate is discontinued, customers will have at least 3 years before they will be required to take service on another applicable rate unless the Commission determines that a shorter period is necessary.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman.
I don't know if there's anything magic about 3 years. I understand the point here where, in a way, it's been difficult, the SGTOU pilot, because we didn't have SG customers largely on AMI meters. So it's been very hard, I think, to see uptake. So now we're probably at the point where we might be able to see uptake. And certainly understand the degree to which it would include, say, investment in specialized controls or something to respond to a time of use rate and really be successful at that might be an investment that people want to be sure they can recoup. So perhaps my suggestion is we move from 3 to 5 years, just give a little longer runway, a little more reasonableness that they could pay off some sort of investment if they made it in order to, work with the rate. Because kind of my concern is if people don't have confidence and don't do it, we get no data out of the pilot. If people aren't feeling like they should or could invest in some controls or something needed to actually be able to participate in the rate to the fullest degree possible, I'm not so sure we'll get good data. So I would like to boost that confidence a little. Certainly that's something I hope to see, some actual results from this pilot, so then we can consider if this becomes a permanent rate or not. So my suggestion is let's just move from 3 to 5 years, give a little more reasonable runway to pay off any investment to try and make the best of that rate.
You're okay retaining, I think it says, unless the Commission determines that a shorter transition is.
I think that's okay.
Commissioner Plant?
Yep, I'd agree with that.
As do I.
Okay, 5 years. Thank you. Also in this proceeding, COSTA recommended that solar rewards participation no longer be a requirement for customers to take service under Schedule SPV TOU to encourage solar adoption that does not rely on solar rewards REC payments. Public Service agreed, and in rebuttal testimony, the company eliminated the solar rewards participation requirement from the tariff, but added a 15-megawatt participation cap to the tariff. During the evidentiary hearing, Public Service stated that the 15-megawatt cap was built into the solar rewards participation requirement, but with that participation requirement removed, the cap remained and needs to be made explicit. Also during the evidentiary hearing, Public Service witness Knighton stated that it wasn't clear that the cap had been reached in recent years. COSTA requests the Commission reconsider the 15-megawatt annual enrollment cap because it limits the number of SG customers who are eligible for the SPV TOU schedule. COSTA contends that broadening eligibility is the reason it sought the elimination of solar rewards requirement in the SPV TOU, and that the 15 megawatts should also be removed. I can proceed to a recommendation if you'd like.
Yes, that'd be great.
All right. COSTA has pointed to no evidence in the record that the cap is either a deterrent to customers taking the service under SPV or that it serves no legitimate purpose. Therefore, it's reasonable to retain the effective cap on tariff eligibility at this stage, and we recommend denying COSTA's request. If additional information can be provided as to any adverse effects that the 15-megawatt cap has on this tariff offering, that should be addressed in a future phase 2 rate proceeding.
Thank you. Commissioner Plant?
I agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman?
So maybe a question on this, because so COSTA has pointed out that they think this could limit participation. I guess was a reason provided for why this might not be a good idea. what I was searching for and haven't found yet, Ms. Friedman, was what is the compelling reason that the company wants to keep the 15 megawatt cap? What purpose is it supposedly serving?
This is what we found is that I don't know. There are some, I might actually turn to Mr. Davis, because actually this ties to another proceeding, the solar rewards proceeding.
That's right. The 15 megawatt cap was part of a settlement that was reached on the medium solar rewards program. And I think that when the company filed its proposals initially in this case, the solar rewards participation requirement was tied to the pilot. And so there was some interplay between participating in this program, where there was a ratepayer-funded incentive payment being made to the participating customers, and this particular rate. So when the solar rewards participation requirement was removed here, apparently there was some reason why the company thought it was still important to maintain some sort of limit on the number of customers who could take service under a rate. As Ms. Friedman says, it's not clear exactly why the company thinks that limit is necessary. However, I think it's also reasonable to think that this is like other time of use rates, and that there's uncertainty about revenue collections when a class of customers is able to move from where they are now and to a time of use where there are financial incentives for changing your usage patterns, and changed usage patterns sometimes cause issues with fixed costs collection. And so I admit this is kind of reaching, but in general, when a time of use rate is introduced, there's a lot of debate over what the impact is going to be on customers and on utility revenues, and I think that's what's in play here. So while the 15 megawatt cap was established for completely different purposes, I think the company is wanting the cap here mainly to guard against unanticipated impacts on revenue collection.
Commissioner Gomez.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a hypothesis about why, and so where I'm left is saying, well, if COSA essentially said, we're worried this could limit participation, and that's a legitimate reason to remove the cap, and we're left in the record with all but no legitimate reason provided by public service to keep the cap, except perhaps our speculation, I would probably err on the side of removing the cap, because I think that's what the evidence would support.
I'd also like to add that this is a secondary general rate, and so unlike the debates that we've had before about time of use effects, there's a demand charge here. There's still a distribution demand charge that will be in place here. So I think the impacts on the company are far more limited than they would be if we were talking about this for small commercial or the residential class. Because again, a good chunk of revenue is still going to be collected regardless of usage through the demand charge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just left thinking COSA wins the day here. I mean, they're the only ones who provided an argument why it should or shouldn't exist. So I'm just not seeing it here why we clearly need to keep the cap.
Was this part of our decision in the prior order? I'm a little nervous about reversing it on Triple R.
This was not specifically an issue that you discussed. This was, as part of that, the company removed at the request basically of COSACIA, they said, of course, in this, we'll take that out in the course of their rebuttal testimony. They said they would remove participation requirement. So this, to answer your question directly, this was not a decision point that you made. It was part of the decision that, yes, this part of the tariff will continue.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, we're in the posture of RRR, and there aren't responses to RRR.
So, did Commissioner Gilman convince advisors to change their mind? Mr. Davis, I see you wavering over there.
Well, I think this is
welcome to my life.
Right. Well, I think the commission can go either way here. Is really where we are, and this, yeah. I mean, I have been persuaded by some of Commissioner Gilman's arguments here this morning.
Careful parsing of the record, Commissioner.
Thanks. So my understanding is that right now we're nowhere near the 15 megawatts. Is that correct?
I wouldn't go that far. The testimony and during the evidentiary hearing, Mr. Knighton was asked, has the company reached that cap? I'm going to paraphrase. And he said, to his knowledge, that cap had not been reached in prior years. So it's not clear if close to the cap, if it's nowhere near the cap. There is such a lack of information in this case on all sides that on this issue that hard to make definitive statements.
Yeah, I'd add to that, as COSACIA states in its RRR pleading, that customers in this class are interested in retaining their RECs. And so they may not be interested in participating in solar rewards because those RECs are used for res compliance. And so I don't think the past is necessarily a good indication of the future because it's a different value proposition to the solar customer.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would, I made the motion, but I would.
No motion made, I just gave you my thoughts.
I would support a motion to raise the cap, just, quite honestly, because we don't know where we are with compliance or with, where we are within the process of getting to the cap. And if we're almost there and we're, extending this program, what's the point? If we're not almost there, does raising the cap do any harm?
So you're suggesting raising the cap to 20 or 25 megawatts?
Or just removing the cap?
Any thoughts?
Let's see what the advisors have to say.
Well, as Ms. Friedman said, we don't have any other information. What we've presented this morning is a hypothesis of why public service insisted upon the cap and why the cap may not have been reached in the past.
Well, it was a continuation of a settlement, right? That's basically.
But it was a settlement that had more to do with how much spending would be devoted to incentive payments in exchange for the purchase of renewable energy credits. So that had nothing to do with this phase two.
Right, and as you said, a lot of the customers are not participating because they don't want to relinquish their credit.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the way I see it, there's two. If we decide that the 15 megawatt cap perhaps doesn't serve any purpose and perhaps is a deterrent, I would see two pathways. One is no cap. The second is we pick, albeit arbitrarily, a higher cap to see what happens. The things that are disturbing to me is there's really no evidence of why the cap needs to exist or what its purpose is. But we also have no evidence about how exactly close to the cap we are. So we are devoid a lot of the information that would help make this the most fruitful. So we could pick a number and say we'll go to that cap and then get actual reporting and information on how close we are to the cap to make a further decision, which kind of limits the, sets a ceiling or we say no cap. So I think either of those is a legitimate option to me.
So you want to go up to 20 megawatts and ask that the provide some data and some appropriate future process where we're at, or you want to remove the cap? I'm good either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go a little higher just to see. I don't think we even understand what the demand is for this rate. So I'd go to probably at least 25 megawatts. And I don't know, is there a suggestion? What would be an appropriate kind of proceeding or venue to get the sort of information that's missing here about how close are we to the cap? Do we see a big acceleration in uptake after the solar requirement's gone? I think a lot of those things would be very helpful to look at this in the future that we just don't know right now.
Yeah, I would say that in the next phase 2, when this tariff would actually be addressed, is probably where that would be, because this was added to the tariff. This is a new line into the tariff. And so in the next phase 2, the company could provide more detailed information about this particular requirement of the tariff, and meaning a cap if you decide to stay with the cap, and then also some data regarding participation and load that would help make an informed decision at that point.
All right, I think the proposal is increase the cap to 25 megawatts and have some language in the order requesting additional information in the next phase 2 proceeding or some alternative process. You okay with that, Commissioner Plant? Good. Commissioner Gellman?
I'm good with that. Maybe one further question. When we talk about this cap, 15 megawatts, 25 megawatts, of what? Of generation, of peak load, of coincident peak load? Like
I would say nameplate DC capacity.
Solar.
It's
nameplate AC capacity.
It will either be its nameplate capacity. I suggest that we do it the same way that it is described in the settlement on the solar rewards in the past, so that it's
because it was tied to
yes.
solar rewards, it was a solar nameplate.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure we're clear.
All right, and that may be AC or DC, but whatever it was in the solar rewards, we'll use that.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Slow but sure, Ms. Friedman.
Well, we're making it. In the decision in this proceeding, the Commission questioned why the company had not yet deployed a commercial rate comparison tool for SG customers who could be eligible for Schedule C or CCTOU, as required by the company's 2020 Phase 2 proceeding. The Commission ordered that the rate comparison tool be made available by March 31st, 2024. The company was also directed to have a process in place so that customers would have a single point of contact to discuss and change their rate schedule. In the RRR, the company states that it can have the rate comparison tool ready by April 30th, 2024, and requests the Commission modify the required date for the rate comparison tool accordingly. Public Service states that when the rate comparison tool is available, it will inform all Schedule SG customers with measured demand of less than 50 kilowatts. Public Service also states that in compliance with the decision, it is in the process of adjusting its procedures so that the rate schedule for a new commercial customer is based on the previous customer's 12-month demand and energy history, not the previous customer's rate schedule. The company requests a May 31st, 2024 implementation date for default rate process and states that it will make a compliance filing in this proceeding when the new process is in effect. So on this point, advisors recommend modifying paragraph 92 of the decision to reflect an April 30th, 2024 as the date when the rate comparison tool for commercial customers with demands less than 50 kilowatts shall be deployed. Advisors also recommend approving May 31st as the implementation date for the new commercial customer default rate process and to require that compliance filing in this proceeding when the new process is in effect.
Commissioner Plant. Let the record show I'll agree with this on April 3rd. So I think the record's clear. Commissioner Gellman.
Yes. I agree, and although I don't think it addresses necessarily our concept of single point of contact if a customer wants to make this change. My assumption is that would be coincident with the rate tool.
Yes.
Availability.
Yes.
Okay.
They did indicate that in their filing.
Okay, great. Yes, I agree.
As do I.
So continuing with the decisions directives regarding Schedule SG, the next issue addresses the requirement the company provide a class cost of service study, the COSS, in its next phase 2 case that shows the revenue requirements for Schedule SG without customers whose demand is less than 50 kilowatts, and for Schedule C, CTOU with these customers, and to propose a new rate class for
Hi, everyone who's joined us remotely. We are having a technical issue in the hearing room, so just give me a few minutes and we'll be coming back shortly.
Test.
Are we back?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Friedman.
You'll be glad to know we only have a couple more on this case.
All right.
So,
Our second case.
actually, it's the first of energy and water, so, just to be clear. But we're almost done with this particular proceeding. So, the decision in this case, required the company to provide a class cost of service study in its next phase 2 that shows the revenue requirement for Schedule SG without customers whose demand is less than 50 kilowatts, and for Schedule CTOU with these customers, and to propose a new rate class for customers with demand between 50 kilowatts and 100 kilowatts. In its RRR, the company asked for flexibility in the manner it complies with these directives, noting that commercial and C&I secondary load shapes are created with sample data, and it does not have load research to produce statistically significant sample data here. On this point, advisors recommend the commission acknowledge that based on available data, the company might require flexibility regarding the manner in which the alternative CCOSS is produced. However, we also recommend the commission clarify that this flexibility does not negate the requirement to provide a reasonable and credible CCOSS that the commission can use to form its decisions in that future proceeding.
Tough to argue with that recommendation, Commissioner Plant. I agree with the recommendation. Commissioner Young?
I also agree.
As do I.
So the final 4 decision points for the commission today are requests for clarification and correction requested by public service. First, the decision requires public service to begin customer communication regarding potential changes in TOU periods by October 2024. Public service requests permission to defer expenses related to these communications consistent with previous commission decisions and TOU proceedings. We recommend authorizing the company to defer customer communication expenses incurred with compliance with the directives of paragraph 85 of the decision.
Commissioner Plant? Agree with your recommendation. Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I.
Next, the decision incorrectly finds that IDDO-related lost revenue recovery through the electric commodity adjustment is not necessary, reflecting the company's initial proposal. However, public service points out in its RRR that it had withdrawn that proposal because the settlement in phase 1 proceeding was based on a 2022 test year. Public service requests the decision be modified to authorize the company to continue IDDO lost revenue recovery and clarify that that lost revenue attributable to IDDO related energy reductions will be determined in future annual ECA prudence reviews. This, advisors recommend modifying paragraph 123 of the decision as requested by public service.
Commissioner Plant? I agree with the recommendation. Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I.
The next paragraph 128 of the decision approves Schedule PG-CPP demand charges on demand measured between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. However, the company had requested that the period for measuring demand be from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., a change from the existing 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. period, which aligns Schedule PG-CPP time differentiated demand charges with the company's other C&I primary time differentiated demand calculations. So advisors recommend modifying paragraph 128 of the decision to reflect the company's proposed 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. demand period for Schedule PG-CPP.
Do I have to?
Yes.
It's just so wrong. Commissioner Plant? Recognizing it's so wrong, I'll agree with the recommendation. Commissioner Gilman?
I have a similar reaction. I agree.
Can we put some language in there just referring to the evidence in this record about how the peak demand period is not between 2 and 7, and that we're curtailing solar, up till 4 in the evening, up till 4 in the afternoon, and that, increasingly our highest loss of load probability is, after 7 p.m. when, our rates fall off a cliff. So would you be okay with, that language?
Yes, and can you get the inflection from the voice in there?
Yeah, see if you can get the Philly accent in there. Would it?
I don't know if it's a clip, but the rates go down. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Maybe it's better without the inflection. There's not too much the inflection. Keep going.
Okay, so finally, the company requests a correction of paragraph 15 of the decision listing exhibits admitted into evidence during the evidentiary hearing. Reviewing the admitted exhibits, we recommend adding the omitted exhibits identified by the company, but retaining hearing exhibit 606 in the list, which was admitted during the hearing, and revising paragraph 15 of the decision accordingly.
Commissioner Plant?
Agree with the recommendation.
Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I.
That's all I have. Would you like to see this? The decision must issue by the 15th of this month.
Do you want to see the decision, Commissioner Plant, or are you okay with ABC?
I'm okay with ABC.
Commissioner Gilman?
I'm also okay with ABC.
As am I.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Proceeding number 23A-0216G, Atmos DSM SI proceeding. Mr. Greenberg, Mr. Osera. I'll try and keep my inflection appropriate in this one.
Not so easy, huh? Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Greenberg of your advisory staff, and I'm joined this morning by Commission Counsel Alex Sarah. And my mic's not on, but now it is. On January 9th, 2012, this year, ALJ Han issued her recommended decision R24-0016 in this proceeding, which examined Atmos Energy's strategic issues plan for the years 2024 through 2027. The recommended decision accepts the terms of a unanimous settlement agreement. Shortly after ALJ Han issued the recommended decision, advisors notified commissioners that the approved settlement included the social cost of emissions, or SCE, in the net economic benefits against which the company's DSM bonus is to be calculated. Because there were no offsetting adjustments to the bonus mechanism, the inclusion of the SCE had two controversial consequences. One, it resulted in a bonus over 6 times the value of Atmos's currently effective DSM bonus when measured on a dollar bonus per decatherm saved basis. And two, it resulted in Atmos hitting the maximum allowable 25% of expenditures upon achieving only 96% of the annual savings target established by the same settlement. As a result of these shortcomings, you decided to stay the RD at the January 24th CWM and subsequently took it up at the February 14th, 2024 CWM. At that meeting, you decided that the SCE should be removed from the bonus calculation, and that based on a recent decision in Public Services DSM-SI proceeding, an overarching emissions reduction PIM should be considered in the Atmos Clean Heat Plan proceeding that had been recently filed. Decision C24-0108 is the result of your deliberations at that meeting. Atmos filed its application for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration of decision C24-0108 on March 13th. In its filing, Atmos urges the Commission to reverse its decision on the exclusion of the SCE from net benefits, stating that the exclusion of the SCE, quote, creates unattainable expectations, unquote, for DSM performance and is inconsistent with the Commission's new DSM rules. It asks the Commission to reverse itself so that a common basis is used for the determination of DSM cost effectiveness and the company's DSM performance. Alternatively, the company proposes that the Commission provide for additional process in this proceeding to evaluate other modifications to the settlement to fairly rebalance the outcome of this proceeding. Atmos notes that the settlement is consistent with Rule 4760F as adopted in proceeding 21R-0449G, which among other things, amended the gas DSM rules to include the SCE in net benefits. In response to the Commission's stated interest in taking up an overarching emissions reduction PIM in the company's ongoing clean heat plan proceeding, Atmos claims that the unique circumstances around the role of the SCE in any DSM bonus in public service companies' DSM SI proceeding do not apply for Atmos because Atmos is a gas-only utility and because there is no ongoing stakeholder process to assess emissions reductions across the company's activities. Moreover, it notes that it has not proposed an emissions reduction PIM in its CHP application, and that none is contemplated in the CHP statute. The company concludes that there's no risk that including the SCE here would set up a potential conflict where multiple incentive mechanisms could be established, focusing on the same desired behavior, which would be emissions reductions. As no other proposed incentive mechanisms for Atmos Energy are currently pending before the Commission in any other proceeding. The company claims that the bonus mechanism in the settlement is part of a package of trade-offs that the company and staff testimony demonstrated is in the public interest. It notes staff testimony that the bonus is justified in the context of the company's proposal on direct to recover lost revenues for the full lifetimes of installed DSM measures rather than the single year allowed by the settlement. The company also states that the larger potential bonus was a factor in its agreement to settle for just a single year of lost revenues. The company argues that the Commission failed to take this broader perspective on the settlement, focusing exclusively on the bonus calculation. When its provisions are considered as a package, the company argues the settlement is in the public interest. The company also recommends that if the Commission does not reconsider its decision, it should provide for additional process in this proceeding to evaluate other appropriate changes to the settlement to rebalance the outcome. Here, the company argues that by removing the SCE from net benefit evaluation without making compensating adjustments to other settlement provisions, the Commission, quote, deprived Atmos Energy a significant benefit of the bargain it negotiated in the uncontested settlement, end quote. It suggests that such additional adjustments could include lower annual DSM savings goals and budget and allowing recovery of additional years of lost revenues for DSM measures with longer lives. Advisors see four options for the resolution of this case. One, deny the RRR and uphold decision C24-0108. Two, accept the RRR, reversing decision C24-0108 and adopting ALJ Hahn's recommended decision. Three, adopt the RRR proposal to put the SCE back into the bonus calculation, but adjust calculation parameters so that the resulting bonus is consistent with historical bonuses on this on a dollar per decatherm saved basis, thus returning the bonus to roughly where it has been historically. And fourth, pursue the option I just described, number three, but also grant the company's request for additional process in this proceeding to evaluate other modifications to the settlement. So those are the options as we see them, and I can make a recommendation or turn it over to you for your deliberation.
Yeah, maybe I'll go first on this one. So I think for me, this was a black box settlement. So for me, I was okay with our prior order because it gave the company an opportunity and other parties an opportunity to respond and address our concerns about what went on. And for me, I'd probably prefer option two, where we allow the settlement to move forward, but adopt some language requesting that this issue and concern be addressed going forward. And I guess as I thought about it, I'm not sure how out of whack this really is. And the example in my mind was picture a $100 temperature control device that produces $50 a year in savings over whatever 15 or 20 year life, basically a 2-year simple payback. And I think that would create something like $400 in net present value participant benefits, $400 in net present value adverse non-participant rate impacts,
and depending on the timing of the next rate case, significant net present value of lost revenues. So, when you look at the size of the lost revenues as against the cost of the DSM measures, I'm not so sure I find this as out of whack as I might have when we talked about it last time. The other thing I'd say is I think this is a unanimous settlement agreement supported by all the parties and approved in the recommended decision. So without having heard the case ourselves and without fully knowing why the parties agreed to what they did, I'm struggling with trying to pick out this one issue, unravel the settlement agreement, which I think messing with this one issue does, and require that the whole thing be relitigated at significant expense for a relatively small utility. So again, I grant the RRR request, put something in our order flagging the issue and the perverse incentives at the margin, and request that the parties try and address this over time. I just think there's too much else going on. And unless there's really compelling evidence of changed circumstances on a critical policy issue, we should defer to the parties. So I appreciate you raising the concern, Mr. Greenberg, but that's where I'm landed. Commissioner Plant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, recognizing the issues that you pointed out, I could support that. I would say a couple of things that I think are pretty disturbing about this whole thing.
Yeah.
So number one, as you pointed out, the settlement itself is sort of opaque. I mean, we don't know what the deliberations were like, and it's one of the downsides of a settlement. We don't really get a very clear record on what got us to where we ended up. The thing that I find just absolutely bonkers is that you have a target of DSM, you have an incentive to reach that target, and you max out on your incentive before you even get there, which just seems nuts to me. I mean, the idea of PIM, and we did this in the Fiesco DSM case where, we started giving a smaller incentive at 80% and then ramped it up over 100%. And, with a recognition that 80% isn't the target, 100% is the target. And here you max out before you even get to 100%, which really clearly states that 100% is not the target. And that approach of doing the linear incentives like that, I think that's sort of the perverse sort of result that we see in this settlement. And I just would ask that the parties who are engaged in these settlement negotiations acknowledge that a target is a target, and we shouldn't incentivize or even max out incentives before we even get there. Or don't have that be your target. I mean, it makes no sense.
I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a reach target, maybe there's customer concerns about non-participant rate impacts if you go beyond the target, if the lost revenues are swamping out everything else, depending on how many fixed costs this utility has against variable costs. I just don't know.
You're right, yeah, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right, we don't know. But, I mean, it's not really the target then.
Commissioner Gilman, what do you think?
I struggled with this quite a bit. I was looking for a fourth option, but fifth option. I was just gonna pass, but I have to vote. I mean, look, I don't think this may not have been the outcome that the commission would have come to on our own had we heard it, but we didn't hear it. So we are where we are in the process of this proceeding with kind of the options before us. And I think as you laid out the risks going down each path of potentially relitigating this, quite a bit, which would come at a fairly significant expense and time effort. Or, you know, kind of almost entirely reopening this issue of lost revenue and what happens. The few things I would say that the bonus has going for it is there are some hard caps in there, and guardrails. And there's also minimum performance to begin getting it. So probably if we have two different tools, I do have some preference for the bonus, maybe given kind of its guardrails and structure over a lost revenue mechanism. And so understanding this as a proxy for that, you know, I don't, not entirely satisfied with the outcome, but I think it is acceptable at the base level. And, you know, I know the company points out there is not an overarching PIM. I would like to express my interest that it would be ideal if there were an overarching greenhouse gas PIM. I mean, I think that is where we're going, right? As we look, there will be some interaction with what happens in DSM to the clean heat plan for Atmos, which is being litigated now. And I think it's important to think about what those interactions are, think about where the incentives lie and how this all plays together. At the end of the day, we're looking for as cost-effective of greenhouse gas reductions as we can get, taking that as a package. And so just a plug, I think that would be a wonderful thing to look into, even though it's not proposed right now. But it's unclear exactly right now, you know, their first clean heat plan is being litigated, but I think it will be very interesting, especially given this bonus structure that we've expressed some dissatisfaction of, and how does this all play together with the clean heat plan, and what does this look like kind of as an ecosystem to get those savings as we move forward. So that's something I'll be interested in looking at in the future. But generally, I reluctantly agree with you that accepting the RRR likely looks like what I would say is the lowest risk path forward to just rehashing, redoing, and I would say it's somewhat temporary until the next DSM SI. And then we look again, and I think we've made our opinions clear. I'm with Commissioner Plant. I hate a math problem. It doesn't add up right. So certainly as we're working on these things in the future and parties are working on these things in the future, it would be ideal to ensure that the structure scales properly to ensure that we really are incentivizing that the target be reached.
So it sounds like I'm running out of objectives, since this is the third case where no one wanted to vote reluctantly, wrongfully, and including, at least I support Commissioner Cummins' request for language talking about how we desire to see the broader PIM, the concerns about the perverse incentives as you get closer to the cap as outlined by Commissioner Plant, and you know, maybe expressing some of the reluctance in the order. So would that work for you, Commissioner Plant, or would you say anything different?
No, that works. I'm waiting for the thing that brings enthusiasm.
Next time. Does that give you what you need? And I think that can be an ABC order. Are you okay with an ABC order?
Yes.
You okay with an ABC order?
Yes.
Does that work for you, Mr. Greenberg? Does that get you what you need?
It does, thank you.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate your digging into this and raising it. Proceeding number 23A-0244E, Mr. Eden, Mr. Gomez, got a high burden, bringing enthusiasm.
Always enthusiastic. All right, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Lee with your advisory staff. This morning, I'll present for your deliberations the application for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration, which I'll refer to as the RRR application, filed by Black Hills Colorado Electric LLC. The company's RRR application seeks clarification to the Commission's recent decision addressing exceptions to the company's 2024 through 2026 Transportation Electrification Plan, or TEP. As you'll recall, one of the major issues of dispute in Black Hills TEP was the Income Qualified, or IQ, EV Purchase Rebate Program. Under this program, IQ customers are eligible for $2,500 rebates for the purchase of new or used EVs. There is a similar rebate program for e-bikes called the IQ e-bike pilot program. Under this program, the IQ residents are able to receive rebates to help offset the purchase price of e-bikes. The administrative law judge to whom this case was referred included both these programs in the company's TEP, but declined to require that these programs be administered as point of sale rebates. In its recent decision on exceptions, the commission found that requiring the IQ EV purchase rebates and the e-bike rebates to be administered at the point of sale better aligns with the policy direction of related state and federal rebate programs. In so holding, the commission found Black Hill's arguments regarding the costs and administrative burdens of point of sale rebates to be uncompelling. In its RRR application, Black Hills does not challenge the requirement to implement the programs as point of sale rebates, but seeks clarifications to reduce the cost and administrative burden of these programs. At a high level, Black Hills requests authorization to limit the implementation of the point of sale programs to dealerships and bicycle shops in its service territory that sell new EVs or e-bikes and that agree to the terms of the rebate programs. Black Hills also states that it would also allow point of sale rebates at the Phil Long EV outlet dealership in Colorado Springs. Also, customers who opt to purchase an e-bike or EV at a non-qualifying location could apply to use the EV or e-bike rebate programs on a post-sale basis. I have a recommendation on Black Hill's RRR application, but I'll stop first for any questions.
Nah, if you could give us your recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors recommend that the commission grant Black Hill's RRR application. Advisors agree with Black Hills that setting up point of sale rebate agreements with every auto dealership and bicycle shop in the state would be exceedingly difficult for the company and would likely be of little benefit. Allowing Black Hills to focus its efforts on certain bicycle shops and dealerships in and around its service territory will help ensure the effective and timely implementation of point of sale rebates. For similar reasons, advisors find persuasive Black Hills arguments regarding limiting the point of sale programs to bicycle shops that sell new e-bikes and dealerships that sell new EVs. And finally, consistent with Black Hill's RRR applications, advisors recommend the commission clarify that IQ customers can still pursue post-sale rebates of eligible EVs and e-bikes that are excluded from the point of sale rebate programs.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree with the recommendation, and I also point out that the RRR request, I think, keeps the economic activity in that community, and I think that's a great thing done in Buffalo as well.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I'm not grumpy about this one at all.
Progress.
Thank you. I agree as well, and I saw some of the same benefit as Commissioner Plant pointed out. This also has the benefit of having that money spent locally and encouraging shopping at those local outlets, which I think is a good thing. So appreciate the company coming forward with this clarification and think it's a productive move forward.
And if you can put in the order, Commissioner Plant and Commissioner Gilman's comments about inflection is out. Yeah, if you could put in keeping economic activity in the community, that'd be great.
Is an ABC decision okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, we're moving. Proceeding number 24 AL-0104E, Mr. Gomez and Ms. Gabrexi. Hey, sorry. I practiced in the last hearing, but I forgot.
That was close. Good morning, commissioners. I'm Nardos Gabrexi.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, let me see if I can hear on mine.
We can't now.
Can you try speaking one more
time to see if I can hear it on my end?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We're gonna, let's jump to the next case and we'll come back to you right after that. As we figure out, I'm gonna shut that off.
I think it's fixed now.
Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Nope. We'll come back in a sec. Proceeding number 24AL-0105E, Black Hills, Affordability Program Funding. Ms. Creighty's, Mr. Nipian.
Morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners.
That's better.
Although we can't bring our bikes or our e-bikes, we do bring excitement with this filing.
All right. We're gonna vote on which is the best proceeding at the end.
Great. Good morning, Commissioners. This is Rhonda Kreitz from your rate financial analyst section. Proceeding number 24AL-105E is an advice letter filing made by Black Hills on March 1st, 2024 to modify the low income percentage of income payment program, or PIP, surcharge effective April 10th, 2024. The company amended this advice letter twice, on March 28th and April 1st, 2024, after discussions with staff. The company provided notice requesting an alternative form of notice, which was approved on March 20th, 2024 by decision number C24-182I. For the commission and those who are listening, I would like to provide some background of the utility PIP programs. Proceeding number 20R-537EG, an emergency rulemaking increased the maximum low-income PIP surcharge from 31 cents to $1, which came about to address the concerns for income qualified individuals as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Proceeding number 20R-326EG was a permanent rulemaking which retained the dollar surcharge from the previous low-income emergency rulemaking and implemented statutory changes to include CO and EOC as utility PIP certifiers in implementation of House Bill 21-1105. House Bill 21-1105 addressed the need for assistance of income qualified individuals in order to get them enrolled in the utility PIP program, especially due to effects of the pandemic when income qualified customer arrearages grew. It's worthwhile to note that stakeholders are engaged in streamlining the process of enrollment and re-enrollment with the new utility PIP certifiers. The company has filed this proceeding stating there are two purposes for amending the BHEAP funding rate, which is an increase to the currently available funding by approximately $2.8 million annually. First is to increase the number of BHEAP participants to approximately 2,600 customers from the current level of 1,800 participants. Second is to fund the anticipated deficit in serving these participants through the program year 23 through 24 timeframe. The company has filed details of their account reflecting the increase of the $2.8 million to include the cost of approximately 800 additional participants to be 1.2 annually and 1.6 million to address the funding level deficit through program year 23 through 24 for the current level of 1,800 participants. The company is proposing to increase the BHEAP surcharge for multiple rate classes of customers. The current residential charge is 51 cents per month, which is proposed to be $1 per month. This is also the maximum permissible under the PUC rules. The impact of the proposed changes for residential customers would be 49 cents per month. Staff would like to re-emphasize that the existing rules have a maximum surcharge of $1 for the utility low-income PIP program. The current surcharge proposal by the company is at $1 for the residential customers. That may include customers of lower to middle, and middle-income groups that may have their own hardships. Staff is available to answer questions or procedural recommendations.
You can give your recommendation, that'd be great.
Staff has reviewed the filing and has had 4 meetings with Black Hills staff, reviewing the forecasted figures, as well as having discussions around the analysis of the historical actuals. Based on these findings, staff recommends allowing the advice letter to go into effect by operation of law.
Thank you, Commissioner Plant. I agree with the recommendation. Commissioner Gelman.
I also agree.
As do I. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's try going back to proceeding 24AL-0104E. Ms. Gabra Zierber.
Can you hear me now?
Nope. We'll keep going.
Try. It actually would help if you could stay on for a second. It's like, can you try now?
Okay, can you hear me now?
All right, we'll just keep going. Let's go to proceeding number 24A-0140E. Mr. Eden, Ms. Harper, CPCN for solar plus storage.
Yes, good morning again, Commissioners. I'm Michael Eden with your advisory staff. So on Monday of last week, Public Service Company of Colorado filed an application for 2 certificates of public convenience and necessity, or CPCNs, to construct, own, and operate the Rocky Mountain Project, which is a 325 megawatt solar plus storage facility, and the Arroyo 2 Project, a 335 megawatt solar facility. As you know, both of these generation projects arise from Public Service's 2021 Electric Resource Plan and Clean Energy Plan, or ERP-CEP. This morning, there's a few initial procedural matters that I'll tee up for your deliberations. Concurrently with this application, Public Service filed 2 motions. First, a motion for extraordinary protection of certain highly confidential information. And second, a motion for expedited notice, shortened notice and intervention period, commission hearing en banc, and an expedited decision. I'll just refer to this as the motion to expedite. In the motion to expedite, the company asks that the commission do the following: shorten the notice and intervention period to 20 days, such that the intervention deadline would be April 10, waive response time to the company's request for a shortened notice and intervention period, consider the application en banc, require that any responses to the motion to expedite and the motion for extraordinary protection be included in the interventions, and adopt the company's proposed procedural schedule that would expedite the proceeding and allow a commission decision by August 1st, 2024. And on this last point, I'll note that the motion to expedite assumes that the commission will set the procedural schedule after parties have had a chance to respond. So in other words, the commission doesn't need to decide the procedural schedule today. Now, as support for the need for shortened notice and intervention and an expedited review of its application, Public Service states that it is critical for construction of the Rocky Mountain facility to commit by mid-August 2024, so that the project can meet its December 31st, 2025 commercial operation date. If the project fails to meet this December 2025 date, Public Service warns that critical replacement interconnection rights could be lost. Public Service argues that a shortened notice and intervention period is appropriate because parties have been expecting this application since the Commission's Phase 2 decision in the 2021 ERP-CEP, and the company will provide a copy of the application to all parties who intervened in that ERP proceeding. Apart from these procedural requests set forth in the motion to expedite, there is a related issue regarding the interaction between the generation projects in this proceeding and the subsequent implementation of the Cost to Construct Performance Incentive Mechanism, or PIM, and the operational PIM that the 2021 ERP-CEP established. For clarity, however, I recommend that the Commission discuss the PIM issues after you vote on the company's request to shorten the notice and intervention period, hear the application en banc, and require that any responses to the motion to expedite and motion for extraordinary protection be filed at the same time as interventions. On these last few points, I have a recommendation, but I'll pause for your discussion or any questions.
Now, if you can make your recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors recommend granting in part and denying in part Public Services initial procedural request. Starting with Public Services request to set an intervention deadline of April 10, advisors recommend that the Commission extend this by 5 days so that interventions are due on April 15. If the Commission were to set an April 10 deadline, this would only give interested parties about 7 days to intervene. This could be difficult for some parties, especially any entities who did not participate in the 2021 ERP and CEP. However, Public Service has demonstrated a legitimate interest for an expedited review of this proceeding, so there's good cause to shorten the notice and intervention period relative to the standard 30-day period. Aside from this modification, advisors recommend granting the request to waive the remaining response time to Public Services request for a shortened notice and intervention period, require that any responses to the motion to expedite and the motion for extraordinary protection be filed by April 15, which is concurrently with the interventions, and to hear the application en banc. And for clarity, we also recommend that the Commission specify that the deadline for any responses to interventions is April 19th, 2024.
Commissioner Plant, I agree with the recommendation. Commissioner Gill?
I also agree.
As do I. I think we've been litigating the CRP plan for over 3 years, and it's time to start putting steel, or in this case, maybe galvanized aluminum in the ground, coupled with the timing issues surrounding the FERC approved generator replacement provision in the company's tariff. I really support hearing this on an expedited schedule and en banc. I just think delay can be risky and raise costs. So thank you, Mr. Reed.
Now, as I referenced earlier, the 2021 ERP CEP and the Commission established both a cost to construct PIM and an operational PIM for all utility-owned generation assets. The Phase 2 decision establishes that the baseline for the cost to construct PIM will be the point cost or capital cost to construct the generation project that was used in the company's Phase 2 bid. For the operational PIM, the baseline is the levelized cost of energy for the relevant project, set forth in Appendix P to the 120-day report. In its filing in this proceeding, the company states that it provides the PIM baselines for both projects. Regarding the cost to construct PIM, Public Service indicates that the allowance for funds used during construction is not included in the baseline. For the operational PIM, Public Service states that in a future proceeding, it will present an adjusted levelized cost of energy baseline that accounts for capital construction costs. The company argues that because of the need for an expedited decision, this proceeding is not a good place to litigate the proposed methodology and implementation of the cost to construct PIM and the operational PIM. Advisors recommend that the Commission take this opportunity to clarify how implementation of these PIMs will work in the context of an expedited procedural schedule. So unless you have any questions, I'll turn it over to you for your discussion.
Do you have a recommendation or anything you'd want to add?
Yeah, I have a recommendation.
Okay, why don't you give that?
Consistent with Public Services statements, advisors recommend that the Commission express the expectation that any CPCNs that are granted in this proceeding will be subject to the cost to construct and operational PIMs and their precise methodology and implementation as determined in subsequent proceedings. The feasibility of an expedited procedural schedule depends in part on the ability to modify the specifics of the PIMs for the Rocky Mountain and Arroyo 2 projects after the CPCNs have been granted. This is especially true for the operational PIM. Regarding the baseline of the cost to construct PIM, the company seems to indicate that the baseline should not include the allowance for funds used during construction, or AFUDC. In addition, it appears that the numbers that the company put forth in this proceeding are slightly different from the numbers that the company submitted in the ERP CEP's proceeding. Advisors recommend that the Commission require the company to explain, one, why the numbers it represents as the baseline for the cost to construct in this proceeding are different from the numbers used in the highly confidential Exhibit 1 to its response to decision number C23-0672 submitted in proceeding 21A-0141E. That's for the listening public, that's the 2021 ERP CEP proceeding. And then second, why Public Service now seems to be saying that the baseline for the cost to construct PIM does not include the AFUDC, despite contrary statements in the 2021 ERP CEP. Advisors suggest that the commission require the company to submit a filing with its explanation of these 2 points by April 19th, 2024, which is the deadline to file responses to interventions.
Appreciate those 2 recommendations, and much more concerned about the construction cost PIM for a solar plus storage project as compared to the operational PIM here. So appreciate it, Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I also appreciate and agree with the recommendation that AFUDC is not an insignificant amount of money, and to not know what it is on these various projects is or whether it's included or whether it's not included is really disturbing. So I look forward to that clarification.
Commissioner Gomez?
I also agree with the recommendation, appreciate it, and to the degree we need to expedite this, I think consistency with what was presented already in the ERP proceeding would behoove all of us to expedite it. So appreciate the questions to clarify if there are differences, if the stance has changed. And I think very much we look forward to expediting it, but any confusion probably doesn't serve that purpose.
I agree with all that, Mr. Eden.
Thank you. Can this be an ABCD decision?
It can. Well, let me confirm. You okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Third time's the charm.
Mr. Gomez.
Mr. Gomez.
Actually, it's down to me. Good morning, Commissioners. This is proceeding number 24AL-0104E, matter of advice letter number 865, filed by Black Hills Colorado Electric LLC, doing business as Black Hills Energy, for the elimination of the extraordinary gas cost recovery rider to become effective April 10th, 2024. By way of a short background, in May 2021, Black Hills filed an application for recovery of extraordinary gas costs associated with the February 2021 Storm Uri event, and proceeding number 21A-0197E. The application for cost recovery resulted in a settlement agreement between Black Hills trial staff, utility consumers advocate, and the Colorado Energy Office. Wholesome US Inc. was the only party to oppose the terms of the settlement agreement. By decision number R22-0043, the commission approved the settlement agreement, which approved Black Hills extraordinary gas recovery rider, which was designed to recover costs incurred during the February 2021 Storm Uri event. The commission set the recovery period for the EGCRR for 2 years, with tariff sheets that became effective on April 10th, 2022. As part of the settlement agreement approved by the commission, Black Hills agreed to forego any carrying costs associated with the amount incurred during the event. Based on the commission's order in decisions R22-0043 and C22-0138, the EGCRR is set to expire at the end of the 2-year collection period over on April 10th of this year. In this advice letter, Black Hills proposes to retain the EGCRR tariff while eliminating the charge at the end of the 2-year period, as approved by the commission in its previous decisions. The company's proposal would adjust the EGCRR rate to 0 from the previously approved rate, and that is charged to all customers subject to the energy cost adjustment, or the ECA. The elimination of this charge results in a reduction to customers' monthly bills. The average residential bill would be reduced by $3.47 per month, and while the average bill for the small commercial customer will be reduced to $13.32 per month. The company states that any over or under recovery of the EGCRR will transfer to the ECA consistent with the terms of the settlement agreement. If there are no Questions? I'm ready for a recommendation.
Yeah, if you could give your recommendation, that'd be great.
Staff has reviewed the advice letter and the accompanying tariffs, and the attachments provided, and they found no material issues with that. Staff recommends that the commission take no further action, and allow the amended advice letter to go into effect by operation of law.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Commissioner Point. I agree with the recommendation. Commissioner Gomez.
I also agree.
As do I. Thank you. Proceeding number 23M-0234G, Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Rosati, Triple R on Public Service Company of Colorado's.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson, your advisory staff. I'm joined by Wendy Rosati of Commission Counsel. Public Service filed its inaugural gas infrastructure plan on May 18, 2023. The informational filing was docketed as 23M-0234G. The Commission issued its decision in that proceeding on February 23rd as C-24-0092. The company filed an application for rehearing, re-argument, or reconsideration on March 14th. No other parties filed Triple R applications or motions to reply. The company generally explains that given that their clean heat plan remains in litigation and dockets remain to be opened or repurposed, and their 5-year planning cycle for 2025 to 2029 is in development, expectations regarding the upcoming litigated GIP and what can realistically be accomplished in that timeframe should be tempered. The company provides a list of at least 8 items it must address by its next GIP per the Commission's decision, including design date calculations, models and testimony, supply curve and potential studies related to efficiency and BE measures, a competitive solicitation for a non-pipeline alternative or NPA project, and to subject essentially all planned projects of a certain size to an NPA. Public Service notes that the company's 2025 GIP filing will soon be under preparation and that it will take significant resources and time to compile the filing, particularly in light of the Commission's additional requirements reflected in the GIP decision. The company raises 10 issues for clarification or reconsideration. First, the planned projects included in the GIP. In paragraph 85 of the GIP decision, the Commission stated, projects not reviewed by a GIP or CPCN will be assessed without the presumption of prudence available in the GIP or CPCN processes when the company seeks cost recovery of such projects. The Commission also explained that it intends to investigate if similar information as would be required in a GIP or CPCN should be provided for projects identified in future rate case proceedings. The company seeks clarification that this applies beginning with the 2025 GIP and notes the 2025 GIP, which will cover the 2025 to 2030 period, presents the first opportunity to assess projects through an adjudicated GIP process. The company notes that given recent Commission approval of rate base on a historic test year basis, there is currently no overlap between what has been approved in prior rate cases and what was evaluated in 23M-0234G, and that 2022 and 2023 capital additions are currently before the Commission in the company's currently pending rate case, gas rate case, and 2024 capital additions will likely be added at a future rate case. So the question before you is, does the Commission wish to clarify the company's assumption whether this statement in the GIP decision will first apply in the 2025 GIP?
Sorry, with you, maybe I'll go to Commissioner Goodman first.
Yeah.
Commissioner Goodman.
So I understand the cadence and like where we are, you know, once we get this going, clearly there's the cadence issue here, but I've reread paragraph 85 a lot of times. I don't understand. I mean, it's all true today, right? Like a project that doesn't go through a specific approval process is not moving forward with a presumption of prudence into the rate case. Like that's just the thing. So while I agree that we haven't hit the full regular cadence of sort of approvals, I guess, if you will, and perhaps some presumption of prudence in individual proceedings that feed into rate cases, I don't know that paragraph 85 necessarily needs much clarification. It essentially states that
things that don't go through some other planning process aren't moving forward with a presumption of prudence, they'll go straight into a rate case, already the situation today. And that, the commission intends to investigate if similar information that would have been required in a planning proceeding should be required later, and that is something we're looking at in the rulemaking we just opened for the rate case rules. So, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a non-answer. I don't really think clarification here is necessary. I don't know, Mr. Sani, if you have anything to add to that, but to me, nothing in here requires the regular cadence. It just kind of points out the matter of fact.
I agree that clarification is not necessary. However, if you wanted to, give any additional commentary on it, you could, but.
I don't need to. Commissioner Plant?
Well, Commissioner Gilman doesn't need to, I don't need to.
All right, there you have it. All right, so we'll go on to the second issue.
Please.
Okay. So the second issue is regarding whether non-pipeline alternative analysis should be required for safety plan projects or not. In the GIP decision at paragraph 96, the commission directed public service to subject all system safety and integrity plan projects to an alternatives analysis, thus expanding the applicability of such analysis beyond new business and capacity expansion projects. Public service argues that GIP rules were adopted in proceeding 21R 0449G based on a very robust record, and that even if the commission wishes to include system safety and integrity plan projects in the relevant GIP rule number 4553, the commission must engage in a new rulemaking proceeding and follow the legal requirements of the State Administrative Procedures Act in order to do so. Public service concludes, in addition to being legally unsupportable and contrary to the commission's own adopted rules, the company cannot support NPAs being applied to safety plan projects due to delays, low likelihood of successful alternatives, and the nascency of the NPA process in general, which should remain focused on capacity expansion and new business projects. A requirement to conduct NPAs on safety and plan projects should be removed, and the company's reconsideration request on this should be granted, the company argues. So the decision point before you is, does the commission grant the reconsideration request and delay the expansion of alternatives analysis to system safety projects until the issue can be vetted in a rulemaking?
So I guess Commissioner Gilman, you got me comfortable with this by sort of suggesting a proposed process with an early trigger point that didn't seem to contravene the rules. So I'm not sure that, we've required all safety projects to have an NPA, but just curious. But I'm not interested in going beyond what's permissible from the rules. So any clarification response?
No, I mean, I think this is essentially tricky because there's been a significant amount of new information, particular to public service and looking at their next GIP. That certainly persuaded me that these are necessary project types to be evaluated. Look, given some of the complications here, I think another route, if we granted this, I'd want to see a rulemaking move forward in 2025. We have seen every one of the first GIPs come in the door and every first clean heat plan. And then we could evaluate in a larger sense, what if any changes should be made to those rules after our first experience with each of them. So that would perhaps be the alternative that I would provide here. I would though, even if we go that direction, really seriously implore the company to look at safety integrity projects in terms of NPAs. I've expressed my interest in going in this direction, so I don't think it should be a surprise later, even if we look at it in rulemaking. But also I think, as we've seen in a lot of the advocacy and documents, there are potential projects here that have real potential benefits and cost savings to customers. And I think that should be the focus of the company. And if there are projects here, they should certainly be moving in that direction to be evaluating them independent of our decision today. That would be my hope. So I'd offer an alternative, if we're not comfortable moving forward now, kind of my line in the sand is I'd like to plan on that rulemaking in 2025. I have no intention to sit out multiple rounds of the GIP. I think that's my main concern.
So it sounds like you're proposing to grant the triple R, but state our intent to open a rulemaking to address this and other issues in 2025, and some language in the order encouraging the company to see if there's ways of reducing safety investments through other alternative investments for the benefit of customers.
Correct, yeah. I think in looking at prudent decision-making, if there are opportunities here to save customers money, that's something that the company should proactively be looking at, independent of the exact determination here, and I would encourage them to do so.
Commissioner Plant, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I agree with that approach. I mean, I was a little bit disturbed by the language in the triple R that basically decided that NPAs are unlikely to be successful before they've ever received them. That's, doesn't bode well. But yeah, I think that the proposed approach from Commissioner Gilman makes a lot of sense.
Does that work for you, Ms. Rosati?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Mendelson, keep moving.
All right. So the next issue is the electrification of gas-only customers. In the GIP decision in paragraph 105, the Commission directed Public Service to include in its 2025 GIP a proposal for how alternatives analysis could include electrification of gas-only customers in Public Service. The company states that it recognizes not being able to electrify gas-only customers may reduce some NPA possibilities and therefore has a gas infrastructure planning facet. However, Public Service states they feel that issue is even more prevalent across the challenge of the Clean Heat Plan and its fundamental objective of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Consistent with the company's advocacy in the company's CHP, Public Service requests that instead of this requirement, the Commission address this issue through this seems issue in a Clean Heat M docket for further collaboration and discussion with all interested stakeholders. So the decision point is, does the Commission remove the directive to include a proposal for how to treat electrification of gas-only customers in the company's 2025 GIP and take this up in the CHP proceeding?
We're an M docket. Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I mean, I think the suggestion here, and there's a coordination that I think makes sense, and there's a timing that's very troubling in that you would essentially miss the 2025 GIP. And I'm not sure if that's a feature or a glitch of this plan, but it disturbs me a bit. The other thing I'm thinking, while I agree this has come up in a pretty significant fashion in the Clean Heat Plan, it's very possible that these are just different conditions that should be thought of differently in terms of like an NPA is being looked at because it could have benefits larger than its costs, particularly to the gas system and its customers. Whereas the path forward on clean heat may look different than that. These very particularly could save millions of dollars for gas customers. Even if the load comes out, it's still saving that system money. So it's just a different flavor and probably a much more direct kind of economic situation in terms of advantage to gas customers than some things in clean heat, potentially could be. So I certainly wouldn't go as far as to say like the treatment will be identical or the thought process is the same, because I think the underlying economics could be quite different for those situations. So I can see it looking in the M docket. What I'm concerned about is if that M docket then misses any sort of involvement in the 2025 GIP. I don't think that would be ideal. I'm trying to think through the timing. I mean, if the Clean Heat Plan, I guess this M docket, they're suggesting if that comes out of the Clean Heat Plan would begin later this year. The GIP gets filed mid next year. Like, can there be anything actionable in there? My concern would be skipping the next GIP completely in terms of addressing this issue. Are we totally ignoring NPA projects that are not dual fuel at this point?
So it would be granting the triple R request, language asking that the M docket proceed in a timely way to make the results meaningful for the next GIP, and flagging the difference in the economics between beneficial electrification that's for emissions reasons and NPA that is for the benefit of gas customers, because it's economics in its own right. So did I accurately?
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking of it, if you all agree. And I think it's the potential difference, right? Like, there are different motivations for an NPI, which are just crudely economic interest that this saves the gas system money, which feels, potentially different from the other reasons for doing projects and looking at these seams issues.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't actually quite understand why we would sort of punt this over to that M docket when the M docket is, as I said, dealing with emissions value. And what we're talking about here is infrastructure, investment. We're not talking about emissions value. We're talking about infrastructure investment. I don't know why, let's take an example of, a customer or an area where you just have gas customers. They're being served by an electric utility. That, there's somebody who's proposing an NPA that would go through that electric utility that would end up having the same impact as if that electric utility were PSCO or not on the gas system. Why would we not want to include that? I don't understand why.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe the result is here, I think the expectation stays the same. I'd like to see this addressed in the 2025 GIP to the extent it gets included in an M docket and something can be found before that, sure, that's fine. Maybe that helps a bit with stakeholder coordination. But I kind of agree. I mean, here the economics are the economics, and that's what's intended to drive this decision or situation. And even if they're gas only customers, if you're saving the gas system significant money, perhaps through an NPA, that still probably serves the interest of all gas customers, independent of who serves their electric. So I see it as a pretty different situation. So I guess I'd say we certainly want it addressed in the next GIP to the extent it could be addressed in some combined M docket before that. That's great, but that doesn't do away with the need to have it addressed in the next GIP.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think that there may be, as you look at the emissions benefits and, using a reduction in emissions to comply with the state statute, there may be additional benefits there that, can be addressed in that M docket that would be separate from the gas infrastructure plan, which is what we're trying to address through these MPAs. And if there's additional benefit there and we have some way of quantifying that benefit and getting credit through compliance with the statute, that's great, but it's completely separate from the issue of an MPA for infrastructure.
I feel like I'm at a tennis match. Commissioner Gilman, anything else?
No,
does that give you what you need, Mr. Mendelson, Mr. Zani?
I believe it does. I just wanted to confirm that the M docket we're talking about is the seams issues M docket, which the company's proposed out of.
Doesn't exist yet.
Which doesn't exist yet, but the company's proposed out of the CHP proceeding.
As perhaps broadened by this conversation.
The next issue is related to negative salvage values. In the GIP decision in paragraph 113, the commission found that a project's cost-benefit analysis should include the negative salvage value associated with the infrastructure in question. The company requests reconsideration and clarification and argues that this item requires careful consideration prior to implementation, including the fact that both gas and electric infrastructure in question may carry negative salvage value, as well as complex time value of money and FERC accounting considerations. The company requests the commission first relegate this particular matter to the commission ordered GIP M docket, to be distinguished from the other M docket we were just discussing, which is to assess a range of forecasting and other items that caused the party confusion in 23M 0234G. The company suggests that determinations made in that M docket will likely be too late for incorporation into the 2025 GIP, which will soon be under preparation. So the decision point is, should the commission grant the company's reconsideration request and not require the consideration of negative salvage value as part of NPAs in the upcoming GIP?
Well, before I turn it over to you, to Commissioner Gilman, I just say, it would be, my intent to ask for your support to look at net salvage value, in the pending, gas rate case, potentially through, supplemental direct. So that may be, another forum, to, engage the issue. I was, not fully satisfied, by, the resolution in the prior gas rate case. So with that background, any thoughts?
They're all connected. Yeah, so I think, and I appreciate the company bringing up some details here. So my thought is, yes, you could use the M docket to look at some of the more minor details, right? But the major issue here is there's a dramatic impact on the inclusion of these values. 70% of the value of the project is a massive amount to be adding on top of the cost of the project. So to me, for the next GIP, the 2025 GIP, I think it's essential that it still get included. I would say whatever is the operative net salvage value be included. If the company so chooses and can do so in an accurate way, I don't have any issue with them including an electric net salvage value as well, something that's been vetted and presented already. I think besides that, there are some fairly minor details that could, perhaps be looked at in the M docket, but I don't see that as any reason to delay kind of the major inclusion of net salvage, certainly on the gas and on the electric if they choose, in the next skip. I think delaying that really obscures the economics, and probably to our earlier discussion today, if both numbers are wrong, this is less wrong. Including it, it is a massive number, and it's important to be considering a more appropriate value for these projects than we saw in the original NPAs.
And do you want to do it in the M docket? Do you want to, what do you do from a process perspective?
So my directive would be for the 2025 GIP, we expect the currently effective or operative net salvage value to be included on the gas infrastructure. If the company chooses and can represent, a fair net salvage value for the electric system, which is, ideally already been vetted and presented in another proceeding, they can certainly do so. As to the other issues, I think those would move to the M docket and could perhaps be then included in the 2027 GIP as a modification if necessary.
Commissioner Plant? I agree with that. I'm good with that too. And does that give you what you need, Mr. Mendelson?
I believe so. Looking at Mr. Zadi.
Mr. Zadi, let's skip the middleman.
Okay, the next issue is related to competitive requests for proposals. In the GIP decision, the commission ordered the company to complete at least one competitive solicitation process for an NPA in the preparation of the 2025 GIP. The commission explained that the solicitation should focus on the largest expenditure in the next GIP application that has sufficient lead time to implement an NPA. The company should also provide a sample contract and RFP for competitive solicitation, as well as a proposed timeline and independent evaluator role to evaluate and implement the actions. The company says, given the timing and the obligations associated with the 2025 GIP, it requests that it be permitted to present the project for which it would seek a competitive solicitation, along with the other required elements after the fact. That is, that the solicitation would take place after the GIP process, not before. The company notes that this is consistent with the intent of and process envisioned by the GIP rules, and is also similar to the process employed for DSP and ERP activities. So the decision point before you is, does the commission agree with Public Services reconsideration request and shift the timing of the competitive solicitation so it is completed after the GIP is adjudicated?
Seems reasonable, Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I think that's generally logical. So my expectation then would be in the actual gift, we'll see, RFP related documents, ideally a, proposal of a timeline for what happens next with a solicitation. And the one thing I'd add is I'd like to see identification of projects in the gift that the company considers candidates for that competitive solicitation and a narrative on why or why not certain projects are considered candidates for that solicitation. I don't want it to kind of be a black box in the GIP in terms of what we're gonna get after and what project they'll be seeking the solicitation for. So some explanation of kind of what vetting or what their thought process is on what projects would be most suitable within the GIP would be very helpful to moving this forward.
Commissioner Plank, writing the request with that additional ask.
I agree, as do I.
Okay, the next issue is related to forecasting. In the gift order, the commission ordered that the subject to any specific direction on forecasting methods and filings that the commission may give in the clean heat proceeding, public service shall file a forecast that fully complies with both GIP and CHP sections of the rules with or prior to its next GIP. The commission also ordered that the topic of forecasting be included for discussion in the M docket proceeding that will soon be opened as a result of the GIP decision. The company asked the commission to confirm their understanding of the order of information to be filed. First, an updated clean heat plan forecast per Rule 4733A6, subject to any specific direction on forecasting ordered in proceeding number 23A0392 EG, is the clean heat plan proceeding, is required to be filed with the company's interim clean heat plan report to March 31, 2025. And second, a forecast required by GIP Rule 4553B will be included in the 2025 GIP due a month later on May 1, 2025. So the decision point is whether to support the company's clarification as presented.
Commissioner Goldman?
Yes, I think they have it right, if I'm reading here correctly, in that, they'll present something in a clean heat plan, interim filing showing their, methodology, and then more or less a month later, submit that forecasting in the first skip. So I think that's reasonable. And I know we identified this as an issue to look at in the M docket, in part because of the confusion about when we could have compliance and what that compliance would look like. Given that, you know, as I see it in the preparation of the GIP, the forecasting kind of comes first. You need the forecasting right before the details of the cost benefit analysis or anything matter. I think we should focus on, as we establish that M docket, the forecasting being prioritized in the sequence, so that any kind of workshops or discussion on that would come early enough that it matches kind of the sequence of, I think, what the company would need to be doing in preparing that. So that would just be my suggestion, that we focus on that a little as we're scoping that M docket coming out of this, to probably prioritize that issue first, given the necessary timing likely.
Commissioner Fire?
I agree with that, as do I.
Alrighty. The next issue is the supply curve and potential study. In its GIP decision in paragraph 54, the commission directed the company to analyze, develop, and support a supply curve for DSM and BE measures in future GIP filings, and found that the supply curve analysis should be logically consistent with the new or updated potential study required in the prior strategic issues proceeding. The commission went on to state the strategic issues proceeding should be filed simultaneously with the GIP, or that both the supply curve and potential studies be submitted with whatever application is submitted first, such that the consistent information is filed in both proceedings. The company suggests that, to the best of its recollection, this issue was not raised during the proceeding or during deliberations, and that there are several practical and legal issues associated with the requirement. They claim that the commission recently expressed a desire for better alignment of the company's SI and supply side ERP proceedings, and requested the supply curve and potential study requirements not be tied to the GIP. Instead, the supply curve and potential studies should be considered under the strategic issues realm or another appropriate forum. where a more robust conversation on these topics can be taking place. Public Service notes its next GIP will be filed May 1, 2025, and the strategic issues proceeding will be filed sometime later in the summer of 2025, and that the company and its consultants are unlikely to be able to complete all required components prior to the May 1, 2025 filing deadline. The company also argues that the supply curve represents a considerable expansion of scope, particularly given the specific direction from the commission to include what the company claims is relatively non-standard elements, such as how much incentive is expected to induce a specific participation rate and how that is projected to change over time. The company also contends that the GIP decision gives no direction on how the increased study costs should be recovered, and notes that its proposed budgets for the 24 to 26 plan is already strained. So there are two distinct decision points for your consideration. First, whether to maintain the GIP decision to require the potential study at the earlier of the two applications in question, the next GIP filing or the next strategic issues filing. And second, whether to require the supply curve concept as part of that potential study, or to reconsider that requirement from the GIP decision.
Maybe we make it aspirational, commercially reasonable best efforts, but Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the friction is here is it would be information useful in the GIF, and it would be unfortunate if 2 months later it just shows up on our doorstep and is not useful in that proceeding. I mean, yeah, it's probably most reasonable to have all attempts made to include that information in the potential study already being completed. If it's possible for that to be done by the GIP filing, that would certainly be ideal. If it's not, it'll go in the SI and we'll do with it there what we can. So that's probably how I lay it out, which I think is similar to as you were describing.
Commissioner Plant? Yeah, I agree with that. As do I.
Okay, so just to clarify, the commission is seeking the potential study in whatever filing is made first, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think keep the target for the SI filing, but include the supply curve information as part of the potential study. If it's possible for it to be included in the GIP, that would certainly be ideal. If not, I think the timing may be what it is.
Does it? You agree? Yes. Does that give you what you need, Mr. Mendelson?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, rounding over the corner here. The next issue is on cost recovery. In the GIP decision at paragraph 139, the commission considered the creation of new clean heat riders to recover the cost of NPAs, including the clean heat SEA and SGA riders. Instead, it directed the company to file a cost recovery proposal as a compliance filing to the GIP. The commission also indicated that in response to the compliance filing, it would have an opportunity to assess the proposed new riders and rate-based treatment of the investment at that time. In its RRR, the company requests, for purposes of regulatory efficiency, that the cost recovery filing be delayed until a decision on the rider request is made in the CHP proceeding. The company explains a separate filing may no longer be required as a result of the outcome of that case, and notes that the CHP proceeding has a statutory deadline of May 23rd, 2024, approximately 70 days from the date of the RRR application. Alternatively, should the commission not approve inclusion of NPAs with the clean heat riders, the company would make a cost recovery filing as outlined in the GIP decision within 60 days from a final decision in the CHP proceeding. The company separately notes the GIP decision is a bit inconsistent as it requires the compliance filing be made within 30 days of the GIP decision in one paragraph and 90 days in another. So the decision point before you is, does the commission grant the reconsideration request and terminate the compliance filing request to review NPA cost recovery to be replaced by review of such by the clean heat plan proceeding?
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, so just to restate that, it was a lot of words. This being proposed in the clean heat plan, so the proposal is just leave it in the clean heat plan and do away with the requirement here for filing and cost recovery.
That's right, that this would be taken up under the Clean Heat Plan.
Yeah, I continue to be interested in what the back and forth and integration of the two processes is in terms of cost recovery. But I think we're on a track potentially in the Clean Heat Plan, so I can support that.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. As we pointed out, I think they're dealing with a couple of different things, but this is not a litigated proceeding, so I don't know about like creating cost recovery within this process anyway. And that's the other one that's going, so it seems like that's our option, so.
Does that give you, I agree, does that give you what you need, Ms. Rosati, Mr. Mendelson?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I think, the only thing that's interesting as we go forward that we should look at in interaction is like technically the cost cap in the Clean Heat Plan. And this kind of gets back to the previous discussion that like your motivation for doing projects as NPAs is somewhat purely economic. And should that or does that, like how does that interact with the cost cap that's intended to be for greenhouse gas reduction purposes when you're doing something else for purely economic, like cost savings purposes for the system? But we can cross that bridge when we come to it. It's being discussed there, we'll deal with it, but I think to keep in our minds, there might be different motivations for these different projects, which could have an impact on how you view it with regard to a cost cap.
Keep going.
Alrighty, so the next issue is construction industry surveys. The GIP decision directed the company to survey the home construction industry on a regular basis to gauge awareness and interest in electrification technologies generally, and the company's BE and DSM program specifically, and that such information should be included in the 2025 GIP. Public service notes that builders are already surveyed as part of the company's DSM evaluation process, and the company has been inquiring about all electric new constructions specifically in recent surveys. It also notes that all evaluations are posted publicly on the company's website. The company suggests that rather than impose a duplicative process, that home builder surveys and associated reporting should continue as part of the program evaluation process, with which the company claims is well established and conducted on a regular basis.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
As do I.
Okay, so the final issue is actual versus projected plan project cost comparison. In paragraph 170 of the GIP decision, the commission ordered the company to include data on the comparison of actual project costs from original budgets for projects meeting the planned project definition and completed within the prior 3 years in its 2025 GIP. The company explains that it interprets this reporting requirement to apply to all planned project types and for all projects placed in service in 2022, 2023, and 2024. The company requests that the commission limit the reporting requirement to planned projects placed in service in 2024 only, particularly given the company's pending gas rate case, where they are seeking to place in rate-based capital additions for 2022 and 2023. To allow for more robust discussion and evaluation, the company also requests that the data requirement be limited to capacity expansion plan projects, because those projects are subject to discrete, robust planning processes. The company argues this reconsideration request is reasonable given the already broad scope of the 2025 GIP. So there are two decision points here related to this issue. First, does the commission agree to limit the cost comparison to 2024 for the next GIP application? And does the commission agree to limit the cost comparison to capacity expansion plan projects? As the company represents, those are subject to discrete, robust planning processes.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, I guess I would state my expectation that this tracking could begin in 2024. I guess I don't see it as limiting. I would hope this is an ongoing practice where we're comparing the budgeted value to the actual value. That's at least how I would imagine it happening, but I understand the point in the process we're at. So I think beginning that at 2024 is reasonable, but I do not see limiting it to only capacity projects as reasonable. I think part of what we're trying to do is understand how the company is planning for these capital investments, and understanding the accuracy of those projections is an essential part of that for all project types. So I would not limit the project types that are tracked.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
As do I.
Great, thank you very much.
I guess, I would view that as an ABC decision. Are you all right, Commissioner Plant? Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
ABC?
Okay, thank you.
All right, last but not least, Ms. O'Neill, Mr. Rosera, Senate Bill 23-291, gas rules.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Erin O'Neill with your Fixed Utilities staff. I'm joined this morning by Alex Acera, I believe is on the, I can't actually tell if his name is up there, but it should be Alex Acera of your Commission Council, and also Alex Rosen of your Research and Emerging Issues is available this morning for questions.
Never have too many Alexes.
Exactly. As I said, this is the A team we've got on this proceeding. We're here to discuss opening and rulemaking to implement certain provisions in Senate Bill 23-291, which was enacted last year. Senate Bill 23-291 includes several sections that added provisions to or modified existing provisions within Title 40, and thus alters the Commission's regulation of Colorado's investor-owned electric and natural gas utilities. Only certain provisions within SB 23-291 will be addressed in this rulemaking proceeding. Other provisions have already been implemented by the Commission, are being implemented in other ongoing proceedings, or are slated to be implemented in future proceedings in the next few years. This rulemaking is focused solely on gas utilities. Advisors will be bringing forward a discussion of proposed rules to implement these same provisions in 291 for electric utilities in the coming weeks. The proposed amendments to the gas rules for consideration here today are intended to implement provisions in Section 40-3-102, Sections 2 and 3 of the Colorado Revised Statute, requiring the Commission to promulgate rules to establish mechanisms aligning financial incentives of investor-owned gas utilities with the interests of the utilities' customers regarding incurred fuel costs. Further, the rules require that the mechanisms established be designed to protect customers and to improve the utilities' management of fuel costs, and that the mechanisms shall apply to different utilities based on the utility's size or ability to implement the mechanisms. Prior to opening the rulemaking contemplated in this legislation, the Commission opened miscellaneous proceeding number 23M0493EG to receive comments, suggestions, and proposals for modifications to the GCA rules and for the development of new provisions in the electric rules to govern fuel cost recovery. Chairman Eric Blank served as hearing commissioner for that proceeding. As part of the decision launching the pre-rulemaking M docket, the Commission suggested that parties comment on the Gas Performance Incentive Mechanism structure, or GPIM, implemented by Hawaiian Electric Company, HECO, through its Energy Cost Recovery Clause, ECRC, as a potential model. The Hawaiian Public Utilities Commission adopted the ECRC to provide HECO with, quote, some skin in the game by exposing HECO to risks in fuel cost changes and to provide some incentive to manage and avoid risks associated with fossil fuel price volatility. So very similar objectives to what we have laid out in statute here. Under this structure, 98% of the difference between the baseline fossil cost and the actual monthly fossil cost is recovered from customers, subject to an annual cap. The baseline fossil cost in the ECRC mechanism is the actual fossil fuel cost in the first applicable month of the year, divided by the actual million BTUs for that fossil fuel type. 5 utilities responded to the proposal that was put forth by the Commission in that M docket, and no other parties provided comments. I'll briefly summarize the comments provided in that proceeding. Durango Mountain Utilities argued that the mitigation measure should not apply to small propane distribution utilities like itself. Colorado Natural Gas referenced the current GPIM rules, which include an exclusion for utilities with fewer than 50,000 customers, and CNG argued that such a carve-out should be maintained here. CNG pointed out that larger utilities may have more resources to mitigate some incurred gas costs, but smaller utilities lack those resources and are similarly less able to absorb penalties associated with such a proposal. Atmos Energy argued that the current GPIN adopted in rules was a reasonable approach resulting from stakeholder input and that it should serve as a starting point for any changes. Atmos criticized the ECRC approach as having an inflexible cap and relying on historical baselines. Atmos argued that reported market indices were a more appropriate benchmark for gas costs than costs incurred over a historical period. Black Hills Gas and Black Hills Electric jointly filed comments addressing risk mitigation mechanisms like HECO, warning of unintended consequences. Black Hills maintains that it is a price taker on the gas market and is therefore at the mercy of unregulated natural gas suppliers when it procures gas. Black Hills contends that evaluating incurred fuel costs relative to a historic baseline does not allow the company to improve its management of fuel costs because it must take natural gas at the market price. Black Hills also suggests that one rational response to the proposed mechanism could be for utilities to over-purchase baseload gas to mitigate the benchmark risk, and then be left to offload that excess gas in the market. Black Hills suggests that the proposed mechanism may increase its financial risk when it is unable to recover all of its incurred gas costs. Public Service Company of Colorado articulated certain principles that it believes the Commission should consider in designing a fuel cost incentive mechanism, such as focusing on metrics within the utility's control, relying on market indices, flexibility, and consistency. The company suggests that gas withdrawn from storage be exempted from the incentive mechanism, that the baseline be derived from factors within the utility's control, and argues for developing long-term fixed contracts and additional storage as tools to reduce volatility. It also argues for baseline derived from market indices, suggests the Commission consider lower incentive caps and risk-sharing percentages, and recommends dead bands be sized around historical volatility of natural gas prices. Based on review of both the statutory requirements and the comments received in the miscellaneous proceeding, staff drafted proposed rules and a notice of proposed rulemaking decision. These proposed rules would eliminate the current gas performance incentive mechanism that was recently promulgated through proceeding number 21R0314G, but those mechanisms have never been implemented by the Commission or by the utilities. And the rules would establish a new GPIM mechanism. I'm now just going to take a moment to provide an overview of the structure of the new GPIM that is loosely based on the Hawaii model as described in proceeding number 23M0493EG with a number of modifications. The GPIM mechanism calculates an incentive payment that could be positive or negative as follows. In each quarterly GCA filing, the utility would calculate the actual total gas cost divided by the actual total volume of gas delivered for the previous 3-month period. So a filing made in March to set the second quarter GCA would also include a calculation of the actual average gas cost for the previous 3 months of December, January, and February. The utility would then also compare that actual gas cost with the average actual gas costs incurred for the same period in the previous year. So the same December, January, February, but for the previous period. This provides the calculation of whether gas costs for customers have increased or decreased relative to the same period in the previous year. Then that amount would be multiplied by the difference, that difference in the cost would then be multiplied by the actual gas purchases for the relevant current period, and also multiplied by the risk sharing percentage, which is proposed to be 5%. This determines sort of the raw incentive amount. And again, that value could be either positive or negative, depending on whether costs have increased or decreased. This calculation of an incentive creates a symmetrical calculation whereby customer rates when customer rates increase, the utility experiences a negative incentive, and when rates decrease, the utility experiences a symmetrical positive incentive. This provides the proverbial skin in the game structure for the GPIM. As is often in the case in rate making by this Commission, this uses a historical test period to establish the baseline, then allows the vast majority of actual costs to be trued up, but retains a small incentive portion, again proposed to be 5%, tied to that historical baseline. This effectively treats a small portion of fuel costs sort of similar to how O&M expenses are treated within a rate case making structure. The proposal also adjusts for actual gas volumes, so the utilities are not rewarded or penalized based on the volume of gas procured, and that the magnitude size of the incentive scales with the size of the utility, with the amount of gas that's being purchased. Overall, this GPIM calculation serves to align financial incentives of investor-owned utilities with the interests of the utility's customers, consistent with the statutory directive. In addition to the basic structure for the incentive, the proposed rules include an exclusion both for propane utilities and for gas distribution companies with fewer than 50,000 customers. So all the remaining utilities for which this mechanism would apply do file quarterly GCAs with the commission. The rules contemplate a deadband of plus or minus 20 cents per decatherm. So if the change in costs falls within that deadband of 20 cents, no incentive would be assessed. It includes recovery of the incentive through the existing GCA deferred account, and proposes a cap on the incentive that is equivalent to a 40 basis point change in the utility's approved weighted average cost of capital based on the most recent commission-approved utility revenue requirement. This is intended to provide a high enough incentive to be meaningful, but not so high that it creates significant risk for the utility, and scales with the size of the utility and over time as the revenue requirement grows. Through this NOPR, the Commission is seeking feedback and comment on the structure of the GPIM and on each of the individual elements of the proposed structure. In addition, the NOPR includes a request that each utility would be subject to the proposed GPIM, provided this proceeding an historical analysis of how the proposed GPIM would have functioned over the past 5 to 10 years. So included in this is also a proposal for rules governing the gas price risk mitigation plan filings, but I'll pause here, having just provided the structure on the basic GPIM structure. So I'll pause to see if you have questions on that, or if you want to have a shorter presentation on the gas price risk mitigation, or excuse me, management filings.
Well, thank you, Ms. O'Neill, and to you and the A team for putting this all together. Commissioner Planning, questions, comments?
No, I have no questions. Appreciate your work on this, and it seems like a good way forward.
Commissioner Gilman?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. O'Neill and the Alexes. And yeah, I'll be interested to hear what the parties have to say, but a reasonable path forward given the statutory requirements, and we'll see how it goes.
You want to go to the volatility mitigation piece?
Yeah. So in addition to the GPIM proposal, the proposed rules include a filing requirement for the more customer-facing gas price risk management plans that were also required by Colorado statute at 40-3-120, section 1. As a reminder, each of the 4 Colorado gas LDCs have already filed gas price risk management plan applications with the commission. Those were filed towards the end of last year, and each of these plans was approved by the commission and is currently in place. The proposed rules would reflect application filing requirements based on the consensus element of the plans that have been currently approved. So such elements would include establishment of a cap on the GCA rate charged to customers and deferral of prudently incurred costs above the cap in a regulatory asset, establishment of a floor on the GCA rate charged to customers and deferral of imprudently incurred costs below the floor in a regulatory liability, establishment of maximum dollar values for those deferrals, appropriate carrying charges to be applied to the deferrals, use of any funds in the regulatory liability when the GCA rate rises above the established cap, recovery of any regulatory asset when the GCA rate falls below the established cap, and timing of the filing of gas price risk management plan applications going forward. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any other questions or proceed to a recommendation.
Yeah, why don't you give your recommendation?
So I should say one other decision point in front. So, well, the recommendation is that the commission should, 1, open a rulemaking proceeding, 2, issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, and 3, the commission should determine whether to refer the proceeding to an administrative law judge or to designate Chairman Blank as the hearing commissioner for the proceeding.
I've been volunteered to serve as hearing commissioner.
You caught that, did you?
I'm willing to serve, but that's a hearing, you guys.
Yeah, I think, you've already done an awful lot of work on this and, appreciate it. Yeah, so I would support, we already gonna do all three of those at once with the, with Chairman Blank as the hearing commissioner. Commissioner Gilman?
Yes, I agree with all of the recommendations and my appreciation to the team and to Chairman Blank for moving it forward from here.
With another reluctant vote.
Just for the record, mine's enthusiastic.
Thank you again, Ms. O'Neill, and both Alex's, and can we commit to get the gas price volatility mitigation into roll quickly?
Well, there's a statutory requirement to complete the rulemaking by the end of this year. I think there's a January 1st requirement for this, so don't expect it to be to drag out, but this will be a TBC decision. I think there's some modifications to what's been circulated already.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gomez, did you have something to add to this?
Not to this, but I just wanted to make a clarification when you're done.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Mr. Gomez, before we adjourn.
Yeah, real quick, Commissioners, before you adjourn, I just wanted to make a clarification with regard to some of the comments that were made this morning that could be confusing to the public with regard to public comments before the commission at weekly meetings. So I just wanted to point out that even though the commission is an agency of Colorado, it's much more than that. It's also an adjudicatory tribunal. And so when a party wishes to offer comments at a weekly meeting, a party may speak to anything but with three restrictions. Number one, any party may not comment on an issue associated with an open or ongoing proceeding. Number two, a party may not offer comment on an issue they have addressed in a pleading filed in an ongoing proceeding. And three, a party to a proceeding may not comment on an issue in that proceeding. So this has always been the requirement for offering comment at a weekly meeting in the more than 25 years I've been affiliated with the commission. Contrary to statements made by the party this morning, the restriction on comments the party intended to make was not an ad hoc decision based on a rule imposed at the spur of the moment. Rather, those restrictions are based on the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution addressing substantive and procedural due process. Due process requires notice and the ability to adequately respond. Consequently, this commission, in ensuring each and every party's due process rights are protected, has instituted these requirements and has done so since before I was affiliated with this commission. And no matter the annoyance of any party that any party may demonstrate at the enforcement of those rights, we will continue to do so. I just want the public and the commission to rest assured that I and my attorneys that make up your general counsel will at all times ensure due process rights are upheld before this commission.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Commissioner Plant, any other matters, comments before we adjourn?
No other matters.
Commissioner Goodman.
Nothing additional.
Thanks all. We're adjourned.